You ever meet someone who changes the direction of your life in just a few seconds? Yeah, Ethan Carter didn't believe in moments like that. Not anymore. Because the last time he trusted someone, it didn't just hurt him, it broke something inside him. Ethan was the kind of man people respected and feared. 30-2 years old, self-made, cold, focused, and touchable. He built his empire from nothing. Long nights, ruthless decisions, and zero distractions, especially not love. To him, love wasn't real. It was just a weakness disguised as something beautiful. And he had no interest in being weak again. His life was simple: wake up, work, gym, silence, repeat. No chaos, no emotions, no one close enough to hurt him until that day. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where nothing unusual ever happens. Sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of his office, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Ethan sat behind his desk, reviewing another file, barely paying attention. Send her in, he said casually. He didn't even look up. Just another interview, another face, another forgettable conversation, or so he thought. The door opened softly. And everything changed. There was something about her presence, not loud, not dramatic. But noticeable. Ethan looked up. And for the first time that day his attention locked. She stood there, composed, but not entirely calm. Mid-20s, professional, elegant, in a simple way, but it wasn't her appearance that caught him. It was her eyes. They weren't soft, they weren't shy. They were strong. And tired, like someone who had been fighting battles no one else could. See, Lena Brooks, she said, stepping forward and placing her file on the desk. Her voice was steady, but not cold. Ethan leaned back slightly, studying her. There was no fake confidence, no rehearsed charm. Just honesty. I need this job, she added. Simple words, but the way she said them, that wasn't normal desperation. That was survival. Ethan had seen ambition before. He had seen people beg, lie, pretend, but this felt different. Still, he didn't react. A lot of people do. He replied calmly, a test. He always tested people, most failed. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a small breath, like she was making a decision. Then she stepped closer, not aggressively, not nervously. Just intentionally. And then she said something that completely shifted the air in the room. I'll do anything for you. Silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that presses against your chest. Ethan didn't move, but his eyes sharpened there. It was the line, the moment where people usually lose themselves. He had heard versions of that sentence before, but never like this. There was no manipulation in her tone. No seduction. No game. Just truth, and that made it dangerous. Ethan leaned forward slightly, his voice lower now. Anything? He wasn't asking. He was challenging, testing how far she would go. Most people would backtrack right there, correct themselves, laugh it off. She didn't. Her fingers tightened slightly at her side, a tiny detail, but Ethan noticed everything. Yes, she said. No hesitation this time. That answer surprised him, not because of what she said but because of how she said it. She wasn't proud of it. She wasn't trying to impress him. She had already accepted something within herself, and that made him curious, maybe too curious. So he pushed further. Just a little, just enough to break the surface, even in bed. The words landed heavier than he expected. And for the first time, she froze. Just for a second, but it was enough. That strong, controlled expression on her face cracked. Not into anger, not into fear, but into something much deeper. Pain. Raw, quiet, unspoken pain. Ethan didn't expect that. Most people would react immediately. Defensive, offended, emotional. But Lena, she didn't step back. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't leave. Instead, she looked at him. Really looked at him. And in that moment, it felt like she wasn't seeing a powerful CEO. She was seeing a man, and maybe understanding him, if that's what it takes. She said softly. No drama. No performance. Just acceptance. And somehow, that was worse. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Not guilt, not exactly, but something unfamiliar. Something he didn't like, because it felt like empathy, and he had spent years burying that. He leaned back again, breaking eye contact first this time. That never happened. The room felt different. Now. Heavier. More real. This wasn't just an interview anymore. This was a glimpse into someone's breaking point, and Ethan knew what that looked like. He had been there once, a long time ago, but he climbed out of it. Built walls, protected himself. So why was this bothering him? Why was she bothering him? He cleared his throat slightly, regaining control. You're overqualified, he said, flipping through her file. And she was strong academic background, experience, skills. She didn't need to say what she said, which meant she believed she did. I learn fast, she replied, still calm, still steady. Like nothing had just happened. But Ethan knew better. He had seen that crack. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. He closed the files slowly. The decision should have been easy, professional, logical, simple, but it wasn't, because for the first time in a long time, this wasn't just about business. It was about something else. Something human, something messy, something dangerous. Ethan stood up, walked around the desk. Stopped a few feet away from her, close enough to see the details, the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself together, the strength, and the exhaustion. You start Monday, he said, just like that. No explanation. No conditions. Lena blinked slightly, not shocked. Just processing. Thank you, she said quietly, but this time there was something different in her voice. Not relief. Not happiness. Just a small piece of stability and maybe, just maybe, hope. She turned and walked toward the door. Same composed steps, same controlled energy, but Ethan watched her differently now because he knew that woman wasn't just looking for a job, she was trying to survive something, and for some reason, he had just become a part of it. The door closed behind her. And the room fell silent again. But not like before. This silence stayed. Ethan stood there for a moment. Thinking. Something he usually avoided. Then he exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. Anything, he muttered under his breath. He didn't like the way that word sounded anymore, because now it meant something real, and real things, they had consequences. He walked back to his desk, but didn't sit down. For the first time in years, Ethan Carter felt something he couldn't control. Not attraction. Not power. Something deeper. Something more dangerous. Curiosity. And that was the beginning of everything. Because sometimes the people who say I'll do anything aren't offering themselves. They're revealing just how close they are to losing everything. And Ethan, he had just stepped into that story, whether he wanted to or not. Some people walk into your life quietly, and somehow they make more noise than anyone else ever has. That's exactly what Lena Brooks did. Monday morning came faster than Ethan expected. He told himself it didn't matter, just another employee, just another routine. But the moment she walked into the office, he noticed. Not because she tried to stand out, but because she did in single quotes t. Same simple style, same calm expression. Same eyes. Still strong, still tired. Good morning, she said, placing her bag neatly beside her desk. Professional, controlled, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't said those words just days ago. I'll do anything for you. Ethan watched from his office. Arms crossed, silent. He expected something different. Awkwardness. Tension. Maybe even regret. But Lena, she gave him none of that. And somehow, that bothered him more. Days turned into a routine. Lena worked hard. Quietly. No complaints. No excuses. She stayed late, arrived early. And never once did she cross a line. No flirting. No special treatment. No reminders of what she had said. It was like that moment never existed. But Ethan remembered every detail. The way her voice didn't shake. The way her eyes held pain instead of fear. And most of all, the way she accepted something she shouldn't have had to. That stayed with him more than it should have. One evening, the office was almost empty. Lights dimmed. City glowing outside the windows. Ethan stepped out of his office and there she was, still working. Laptop open, files neatly organized, focused. Alone, everyone else left. He said. She didn't look surprised. I had things to finish, she replied calmly. Of course she did. That was her pattern. Ethan leaned slightly against the wall, watching her. Studying her. You don't have to stay this late, he said. This time she looked up. And for a second, their eyes locked. There it was again. That quiet intensity. I know, she said, but I want to. Double quote simple. Direct. No hidden meaning. And yet it felt like there was more. Ethan stepped closer, slowly. You're not what I expected, he admitted. Her expression didn't change much. Most people say that, she replied, and they're usually wrong. That caught him off guard, a small reaction but real. You think I'm wrong, he asked. She tilted her head slightly, not challenging, just thoughtful. I think you're trying to figure me out, she said, and you don't like that you can't. Silence. That one landed. Ethan exhaled quietly. A faint smirk touched his lips. Maybe, he admitted. It had been a long time since someone spoke to him like that. Without fear. Without calculation. Just honesty. He respected that dot more than he expected. The rain started suddenly. Heavy dot loud against the glass windows. The kind of rain that makes everything feel slower dot quieter dot more real dot. Lena glanced outside for a moment, then back to her screen, focused again, but Ethan noticed something, a shift, small, almost invisible. You don't like rain? He asked. She paused, dot just slightly dot then shook her head. It's fine. That wasn't an answer. And he knew it dot. Ethan moved closer to the window dot, standing beside her now, not too close, but close enough to feel the silence between them. It reminds you of something, he said, not a question, a statement. Lena's fingers stopped moving, her eyes stayed on the screen, but her focus gone for a moment. She didn't respond, and Ethan almost let it go dot almost. Then, it reminds me of when things went wrong, she said quietly. There it was, not the full truth, but enough dot. Ethan didn't push further, not yet. Instead, he asked something simpler. Why this job? She finally looked at him again dot, and this time there was no mask. Because I needed something stable, she said, her voice softer now, more real, something that wouldn't disappear overnight. Ethan felt that dot more than he showed. Things disappear that easily? He asked dot. Lena let out a small breath. Not quite a laugh, not quite sadness. Everything does, she said, and sometimes people help it disappear faster. That wasn't random. That was personal dot, very personal. Ethan's expression hardened slightly, not at her but at the thought. Someone hurt you, he said. She didn't answer immediately, didn't deny it either. Instead, she closed her laptop slowly dot, then stood up, facing him fully now. Someone I trusted, she said dot, and just like that the room felt heavier. Ethan didn't like where this was going, because it felt familiar. Too familiar. Trust is overrated, he said coldly. Lena's eyes softened slightly, not in agreement dot, but in understanding. No, she said gently, it's just dangerous in the wrong hands. That hit harder than anything else she'd said, because Ethan knew exactly what that felt like, and suddenly this wasn't about her anymore dot, it was about both of them dot. Two people, different stories, same scars. The rain got heavier, the sound filling the silence between them dot, and for the first time, neither of them tried to escape it. You still think I meant what I said that day? She asked suddenly. Ethan looked at her dot. Really looked. You tell me, he replied. Lena held his gaze dot, steady dot, honest dot, double quotes. I didn't, she said. But I believed I had to. That was worse. Much worse dot. Ethan frowned slightly. Why? Her jaw tightened, just a little. Because when everything falls apart, she said quietly, you start thinking survival matters more than dignity dot, double quotes. Silence dot, heavy, unavoidable. Ethan felt something shift again. That same unfamiliar feeling dot, empathy dot, but deeper this time, more personal. You don't believe that anymore, he said. She shook her head slowly. No. A pause. Then, I don't want to be that person. That mattered, more than she probably realized. Ethan stepped a little closer. Not intentional dot, just natural. Good, he said dot, because he meant it. The tension changed after that dot, not gone, just different dot, less sharp, more real. And for the first time Ethan didn't feel in control. He wasn't leading this conversation. He was part of it dot, equal dot, and that was new. The rain started to slow dot, drifting into a quiet rhythm. Lena picked up her bag. I should go, she said. Back to professional dot, back to distance. But something had already changed. Ethan nodded dot, but didn't move, didn't look away. Lena. She stopped at the door, turned slightly. Yes. A pause. Just a second, but it mattered. If I asked you that question again, he said slowly, would your answer be the same? The room held its breath. Lena didn't answer right away. She thought about it dot, really thought about it. Then she met his eyes, and this time, there was no hesitation. No, she said dot, simple dot, clear dot, honest. And somehow that was exactly what he wanted to hear. She left, the door closing softly behind her. And once again Ethan was alone. But not the same kind of alone. Because now, there was something else in the room, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Respect, curiosity, and something even more dangerous, interest. Real interest dot, not in what she offered, but in who she was. Ethan walked back to his desk slowly, sat down, but didn't open any files, didn't check his phone, didn't move. Because for the first time in years his mind wasn't on work dot, it was on her. Her words dot, her strength, her pain, and the way she refused to break, even when she clearly had every reason to. He exhaled quietly, shaking his head slightly. This is a mistake, he muttered. Because he knew people like Lena, they didn't just enter your life. They changed it, and Ethan Carter, he didn't do change, not anymore, but something told him this time. He wouldn't have a choice, because the arrangement he thought he understood. It wasn't about control. It wasn't about power, and it definitely wasn't about anything. It was about something far more complicated. To broken people, learning how not to fall apart again. And that was just the beginning. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing isn't falling in love. It's getting close enough that you start to feel again. And Ethan Carter, he was getting closer than he ever planned. It started with something simple. Dinner, one word. That's all he said. No explanation. No business reason. No pressure. Just dinner. Lena looked at him from across the office, clearly caught off guard. Dinner? She repeated. Ethan nodded slightly, hands in his pockets. Not work, he added, just dinner. There was a pause, not awkward but careful, because this wasn't just a casual invitation. They both knew that. Why? She asked quietly, honest question, and Ethan respected that. Because I want to know who you really are. He said. No games. No hidden tone. Just truth, and somehow that made it harder to refuse. Lena looked down for a moment. Thinking. Weighing it. This wasn't just about saying yes or no. It was about crossing a line she had spent weeks carefully avoiding. When she looked back up, her answer was soft. Okay. That night felt different for both of them. Ethan arrived early, which was unusual. He didn't wait for people waited for him, but tonight, he checked his watch more than once, not impatient. Just aware. And then she walked in. Everything else faded. The soft music. The low conversations. The clinking glasses, none of it mattered. Because Lena Brooks looked different, not dramatically. Not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that held it. A simple black dress, elegant, understated. Her hair falling naturally around her shoulders. No effort to impress. And yet impossible to ignore. Ethan stood up without thinking. That alone said everything. You look, he started. Then stopped. Because for once words didn't come easily. Lena gave a small, almost shy smile. Different, she offered. Ethan shook his head slightly. No, he said, just you, and somehow that meant more. Dinner started slowly, not because they didn't have things to say, but because they were both careful. To people used to control. Now sitting in something unpredictable. So Ethan said, picking up his glass, tell me something real. Lena raised an eyebrow slightly. Real? He nodded. Not the interview version, not the office version. A pause, then she leaned back slightly, studying him. And you? She asked. You're going to be real too? Ethan smirked faintly. That depends, he said. On what? On how honest you are. That earned a small smile. And just like that the tension shifted. Less guarded, more human. They talked. At first about simple things. Where they grew up. What they studied, the usual surface level conversations, but slowly, it went deeper. What do you regret? Lena asked at one point. Ethan didn't answer immediately. That question he wasn't used to. I don't dwell on the past, he said. Safe answer. Controlled. Lena tilted her head slightly. That's not what I asked. Double quotes. Silence. She wasn't pushing, just waiting. And for some reason Ethan didn't deflect this time. I trusted the wrong person, he said. Finally. Simple. But heavy. Lena didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. I know that feeling, she said softly. Their eyes met. And in that moment there was understanding. Not spoken, but felt. Time passed quickly. To quickly, the more they talked the more natural it became. Ethan found himself listening. Really listening. Not analyzing, not judging. Just present. And Lena? She laughed. Not the polite kind, not the controlled version she wore at work, but real laughter. Light. Free. And it caught him off guard because he realized something. He had never seen her like this before. Not even close. You're different tonight, he said. She smiled slightly. So are you. He didn't deny it because she was right. By the time dinner ended neither of them wanted to leave, but neither of them said it. Instead they walked side by side through the quiet city streets, streetlights casting soft glows around them. The night air calm. Peaceful. And for once Ethan didn't feel the need to fill the silence, because the silence, it wasn't empty. It was comfortable. You don't let people in easily, Lena said after a while. Not a question. An observation. Ethan glanced at her. No, he admitted. Why? He thought about it. Then gave the simplest answer. Because it never ends well. Lena nodded slightly. Fair. A pause. Then, but you still asked me to dinner. That stopped him. He looked ahead. Thinking. Yeah, he said quietly. I did. Why? There it was again. that question, the one he didn't have a clear answer for, or maybe he just didn't want to say it out loud. I don't know, he admitted. And that was the most honest thing he had said all night. They reached her building. And suddenly everything slowed down. That invisible line again, right in front of them. The one neither of them wanted to cross. But neither wanted to walk away from either. This is me, Lena said softly. Ethan nodded. But didn't move, neither did she. They just stood there. Close. Not touching but aware of everything. The way her breath softened, the way his focus narrowed, the way the world around them seemed to fade. You had a choice tonight, Ethan said quietly. She looked at him. I know, and you still came. A small pause. Then, I'm glad I did. That was it. Simple. But real. Ethan stepped just slightly closer. Not enough to invade her space, but enough to change the moment. Me too, he said. Their eyes locked, and this time there was no confusion. No testing. No power. Just connection. Real. Unfiltered. Dangerous. For a second it felt like everything was about to change, like one small move could shift everything between them. And maybe that's exactly why it didn't happen, because Lena stepped back, not suddenly, not dramatically. Just enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to think. Good night, Ethan, she said softly. There was something in her voice. Not distance, not rejection. Just control. And Ethan understood, even if he didn't like it. Good night, Lena. She turned, walked inside, and just like that the moment ended. Ethan stood there for a second longer, staring at the closed door. Processing. Because something had happened tonight, something he couldn't ignore. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It wasn't just interest. It was deeper. More personal. More real. And that made it complicated. He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. This is a problem, he muttered. Because he knew once you start feeling something like this, there's no easy way out. Upstairs, Lena leaned against her door after closing it, eyes closed, heart racing, because she felt it too, that connection, that pull, that dangerous possibility, and for someone who had already lost so much that scared her more than anything. Because this wasn't just attraction, this wasn't just a moment. This was the beginning of something deeper. Something neither of them planned. Something neither of them could control, and if they weren't careful it could either heal them or break them even more. Sometimes the hardest part isn't falling for someone. It's knowing exactly when to stop, and neither Ethan nor Lena were ready for what came next. The truth doesn't knock. It doesn't warn you. It just shows up. And when it doesn't ask if you're ready. After that night, everything changed. Not on the surface. Not in a way anyone else could see. But between Ethan and Lena, there was something new, something unspoken, something that made every glance last a second longer, every silence feel heavier, every word matter more than it should. And that was dangerous. At the office, they kept things professional. Careful. Controlled. Like nothing had shifted. But people notice energy. And theirs, it wasn't the same. You've been distracted, Ethan's business partner, Mark, said casually one afternoon. Ethan didn't even look up from his laptop. I'm working, Mark smirked. Yeah, just not on work. That got his attention. Ethan leaned back slightly. What are you trying to say? Mark shrugged. Nothing, just interesting timing. Timing of what? Mark hesitated. Then said it. The thing Ethan didn't expect. That new hire of yours, he said. Lena, right? Ethan's expression didn't change, but something inside him did. What about her? Mark crossed his arms. I've heard things. Double quotes. Silence. Cold, sharp silence. Ethan's tone dropped instantly. What things? Mark studied him for a second like he was deciding how much to say. Just rumors, he said, about why she needed this job so badly. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't like rumors. He liked facts. Say it clearly, he said. Mark sighed. Apparently, she got involved with someone, business-related, trusted the wrong guy, ended up taking the fall when things went bad. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Meaning, Mark continued. She's dealing with debt, legal pressure, maybe worse. The room went quiet. Because suddenly everything Lena had said started making sense. I'll do anything for you. That wasn't a line, that was survival. Ethan didn't respond, didn't react, but his mind, it was already moving, connecting pieces. Understanding things he hadn't before, and something about it didn't sit right with him. Not because of what she did, but because of what she went through that evening. He found her still at her desk, like always. Focused. Controlled. Like nothing in her world was falling apart. Lena, she looked up. And for a second, there was something in his tone she hadn't heard before. Not authority. Not curiosity. Something sharper. What happened? He asked. No greeting. No build dash up. Just straight to the point. Lena's expression shifted. Just slightly. I'm not sure what you mean. Ethan stepped closer. Don't do that, he said. Don't pretend. Her jaw tightened. I'm not pretending. Yes, you are. The tension snapped into place. Fast. Sharp. Real. Someone told me about your situation. He continued. Silence. Heavy silence. Lena stood up slowly, her eyes meeting his. And this time there was no softness. Just defense. What exactly did they tell you? She asked. Ethan didn't hesitate. That you trusted the wrong person, he said. That you're dealing with the consequences. Pause. Then that you're in trouble. Her expression didn't break, but her eyes, they changed, because he was right. And she knew it. You shouldn't believe everything you hear, she said calmly. Ethan shook his head. I believe patterns, he replied, and yours makes sense now. That hit hard. Because it wasn't judgment. It was understanding. And somehow that was worse. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. There it was. The real question. Not about rumors. Not about the past. About trust. Lena laughed quietly, but there was no humor in it. Tell you what, she said. That I made a mistake. That I trusted someone who ruined everything. Her voice started to rise. Not loud but emotional. That I lost control of my own life for a while? Ethan didn't interrupt. Didn't stop her, because this was real. I didn't tell you, she continued, because I didn't want your pity. That word hung in the air. Pity. Ethan's single quotes S expression hardened. I don't pity you, he said. Then what do you do? She shot back. Analyze me, fix me. Her voice cracked slightly, just for a second, but it was enough. I could have helped you, Ethan said. And he meant it. That's what made it complicated. Lena shook her head immediately. No, she said firmly. I didn't want help. Silence. Then I wanted control. That stopped everything. Because that was the truth. Pure. Raw. Unfiltered. You think this is control? Ethan asked, gesturing around this situation. Lena held his gaze. Yes, she said, because I chose it. A pause after everything else was taken from me. That hit deeper than anything else. Because Ethan understood that. Too well. When everything falls apart, she said quietly, you don't think about pride anymore. Her voice softened. You think about surviving. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Unavoidable. Ethan stepped closer, not aggressively, but intentionally. You don't have to give yourself away to survive, he said. Lena's eyes glistened slightly, but she didn't look away. You don't understand what it's like, she whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. Don't I? That question carried weight. Because suddenly this wasn't just her story. It was his too. Different details. Same damage. I built everything from nothing, he said quietly. No one helped me. No one saved me. A pause. I know what it's like to have nothing. Lena looked at him. Really looked, and for the first time she saw it. Not the success, not the control, the scars. Hidden. But real. Then you should understand, she said softly, why I did what I had to do. Ethan nodded slightly. I do, he admitted. Pause. Then, but I don't like it. That honesty, it mattered. Because he wasn't judging her. He was concerned. Then don't, she said simply. Don't like it. Don't get involved. That created distance instantly, like a wall going up between them, and Ethan felt it more than he expected. He stepped closer again. This isn't just about you anymore, he said. Lena frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means, he continued, you're part of this company now, and I don't let people on my team fall apart. That sounded professional, but it wasn't just that. There was something personal in it. And Lena noticed. You don't get to decide that for me, she said quietly. I already did. Silence, because that line, that was clear. Firm. Final. Ethan exhaled slowly, frustration building, not because she was wrong, but because she wouldn't let him in. Let me help you, he said. Simple. Direct. Real. Lena's eyes softened. Just for a moment, but then she stepped back. Physically. Emotionally. I can't, she whispered that word again. Can single quotes T. Not won't, can't. Why? He asked. Because he needed to understand. And maybe he needed her to say it, because if I do, she said slowly, I'll start depending on you. Silence. And I can't afford to lose that too. That was it. That was the truth. Not about money. Not about mistakes. About fear. Real fear. Ethan didn't respond immediately because, for the first time, he didn't have a solution. Didn't have control. Didn't have the answer. I'm not him, he said. Finally. Lena nodded. I know. Pause, which is why this is harder. That line, it stayed. She picked up her bag, hands steady. Even if everything else wasn't, I should go, she said quietly. Back to distance, back to control. Lena He tried, one more time, but she stopped him. With just a look, not angry, not cold, just final. I need to do this my way, she said. And then she walked away, the door closed, and the silence that followed. It wasn't empty. It was loud. Because everything that wasn't said still existed. Ethan stood there. Still. Processing. Because this wasn't simple anymore. This wasn't just curiosity or interest. This was something deeper. Something real, and real things. They hurt. For the first time in years, Ethan Carter felt powerless. Not in business. Not in control, but in something that mattered more. Connection. And Lena? She walked away, not because she didn't feel something, but because she felt too much. Sometimes, the hardest choices aren't about right or wrong, they're about protecting yourself, even when it costs you something real. And both of them, they had just made that choice. But the story wasn't over, because when feelings don't disappear, they come back. Stronger. More complicated, and impossible to ignore. Time doesn't always heal things. Sometimes it just gives you space to feel what you've been avoiding. And for Ethan Carter, those weeks without Lena, they weren't peaceful. They were loud. At first, he told himself it was nothing. Just distance, just routine resetting itself, back to normal, back to control. But normal didn't feel the same anymore. The office felt quieter. Not physically but emotionally. Her desk was still there, neat, organized. Empty, and somehow, that bothered him more than he expected. He tried to focus, meetings, numbers, decisions, everything he used to do without thinking, but now, there was a pause, a distraction, a thought that kept coming back, her voice, her words, her eyes. I can't afford to lose that too. That line stayed. Because it wasn't rejection. It was fear. Real fear. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel frustrated by it. He understood it. Weeks passed. No calls. No messages. No updates. Lena Brooks had completely stepped out of his world. And yet she hadn't left his mind for a second. One evening late, the kind of late where the city slows down and everything feels heavier. Ethan sat alone in his office. Lights dim. City glowing outside the windows. Silent. But not peaceful. Because his thoughts were louder than ever, he leaned back in his chair, staring at nothing. For a man who always had answers, this felt unfamiliar. Uncomfortable. Powerless. And he hated that. A soft knock broke the silence. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Come in, he said finally. The door opened slowly, and for a second he thought he imagined it, because standing there was her. Lena. No perfect styling. No office composure. Just her. Real. Tired. Honest. Ethan stood up instantly. Not planned. Not controlled. Just instinct. You're here, he said. Simple words, but they carried everything he didn't say. Lena nodded slightly. I needed to talk to you. Her voice wasn't steady this time. It was real. And that alone told him everything had changed. She stepped inside. Closing the door behind her. And suddenly it felt like the entire world had shrunk to that one room. That one moment, that one conversation. I was wrong, she said. No build-up. No hesitation. Just truth. Ethan didn't interrupt, didn't question it. He just listened. Because this mattered. I thought I had to handle everything alone, she continued. That if I let anyone in, I'd lose control again. Her eyes met his, and I didn't want to go back to that place. Ethan nodded slowly. I get that, he said quietly, because he did more than she knew. But I also realized something, she said. A small pause, like she was choosing her words carefully. I pushed away the one person who wasn't trying to take anything from me. Double quotes. Silence. Because that hit. Ethan stepped closer. Not too fast. Not overwhelming. Just enough to show he was there. You didn't push me away, he said. Lena gave a small, sad smile. I did, she replied. I just had a good reason. That honesty, it mattered, because she wasn't pretending anymore. I don't want to be that version of myself, she said softly. The one who thinks she has to sacrifice everything just to survive. Her voice trembled slightly. But I also don't know how to do this differently. That was the real confession, not about the past, but about the present, the uncertainty, the fear of trying again. Ethan looked at her. Really looked, and for the first time he didn't see someone broken. He saw someone trying, and that was stronger than anything else. You don't have to figure it out all at once, he said, his voice calm, steady. You just have to be real. A pause, with me. Lena's eyes softened, because that sounded simple, but it was in single quotes. Not for someone who had learned to survive by building walls. And if I can't give you everything, she asked quietly. There it was. The fear. The doubt. The hesitation. Ethan didn't answer immediately, because this time he wanted to get it right. Not controlled. Not calculated. Just honest. Then don't, he said. Simple. Clear. Real. Lena blinked slightly, not expecting that. I don't want everything, he continued. I don't want promises you're not ready to make. He stepped closer. Now only inches away. I want what's real. Double quotes. Silence. Deep. Meaningful. That's it, she asked softly. That's it. For the first time Lena looked unsure, not scared, not defensive. Just vulnerable. And that was new. Why? She asked. Why are you okay with that? Ethan let out a small breath. Because that question, it mattered. Because I know what it feels like to lose something real, he said. And I'm not doing that again. Just because it's not perfect. That truth, it changed everything. Lena stepped closer. Slowly. Carefully, like she was testing something fragile. Something new. You're different from what I expected, she said. Ethan smirked slightly. You said that already. She shook her head. No, she said softly. I mean it differently now. A pause. You're not trying to control this. Ethan's expression softened. Neither are you. And just like that, the distance between them disappeared. Not dramatically. Not suddenly, but naturally. Lena exhaled slowly. Like she had been holding something in for too long. I'm scared, she admitted. There it was, the real truth. Ethan didn't try to fix it, didn't dismiss it, didn't solve it. He just nodded. I know. A small step closer. Now they were standing just inches apart. No space left for pretending. But I don't want to run this time, she said, her voice quiet but strong. Ethan looked into her eyes. And for the first time there was no confusion. No tension. No uncertainty. Just clarity. Then don't, he said. Softly. That was it. No big speech. No dramatic moment. Just two people choosing to stay. Lena closed the last bit of distance, resting her forehead gently against his. Not rushed. Not forced. Just right. No conditions. No deals. No desperation. Just presence. Just trust. Just something real. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak, because for the first time he didn't need to. And Lena, she didn't feel like she was losing control. She felt like she was finally letting go of the need to control everything. Sometimes love doesn't come with promises, sometimes it comes with understanding. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose someone. Not because you have to, not because you're afraid, but because you want to. Ethan Carter never believed in that kind of connection. Not after everything he lost, but standing there, with Lena he realized something. This wasn't about the past. This wasn't about mistakes. This wasn't about survival. This was about choice, to people. Both broken in their own way, both afraid of losing again. And still choosing each other anyway, not perfectly, not completely, but honestly. And this time, that was enough, because love without conditions isn't about having everything. It's about finally finding something real and not letting it go.